I don't remember the exact moment childhood ended, but I remember the smell of fresh-cut grass on a Friday evening. I remember the sound the screen door made when it slammed. Not harsh, just final, like punctuation at the end of a sentence. And I remember the way summer felt back then. Sticky, slow, endless. Back in 1953, the world was smaller. Not because we knew less, but because we didn't need to know more. We had what we needed: a good pair of shoes, a working radio, and a backyard with just enough room to dream in. I grew up in a little town in Iowa, the kind you drive through in 5 minutes and forget, unless you grew up there. Then it stayed with you. Our street was lined with maple trees that turned orange like clockwork in the fall. The sidewalks were cracked from years of bike tires and running feet, and the mailman knew everyone by name, and who'd been skipping school. There were kids on every porch. You didn't need to schedule play. You just stepped outside and joined the game already in progress. We played kick the can until dark. Used chalk to draw hopscotch on the sidewalk that the rain would wash away, only for us to redraw the next day. We rode our bikes like they were rockets. And when your chain slipped, someone's older brother knew how to fix it, greasy hands and all. Dinners were at 6. Always. Mom rang the triangle bell we had on the porch post, a sound every kid in the neighborhood recognized as a signal. Come home. And we did. The plates were simple: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans from a can. Sometimes corn from Mr. Dunlap's field down the road, if the season was right. We didn't have much, but I don't remember ever being hungry. Sundays were for church. Pressed clothes, hair combed with more water than skill. Wooden pews, fans printed with pictures of Jesus or a funeral home, and hymns that made the walls shake, even though no one ever sang quite in tune. Afterward, the grown-ups stood outside and talked about the same things they always did: weather, crops, politics, but always with a kind of politeness you don't see much anymore. We kids would sneak off to the gravel lot behind the church to throw pebbles or poke dead bugs with sticks. We didn't need entertainment. We were the entertainment. Our radio sat on the kitchen counter. It was made of brown plastic, with a golden dial that made a soft click when you turned it on. That radio taught me how voices could travel across states, across silence, across hearts. We listened to baseball games in the summer, the Lone Ranger in the evenings. And sometimes, when I couldn't sleep, I'd sneak into the kitchen, turn the volume way down, and listen to voices from far away. Cities I couldn't spell, accents I didn't know existed. I believed the world was out there, waiting. There was a girl named Lila 2 houses down. Blonde braids, grass-stained knees. She could throw a baseball harder than most of the boys and once beat me in a race barefoot. We were 8, maybe 9, and I thought she might be my wife someday. She moved away the next year, and I never saw her again. But for one summer, we built a kingdom in her backyard, with sticks as swords and a garden hose as our dragon. That was enough. I remember the sound of cicadas, buzzing so loud you'd think the world was electric. I remember lightning bugs, thousands of them, blinking like secret code on warm July nights. I remember my dad's hands, always rough from work, and the way he'd pat my shoulder without saying much. That was his version of "I'm proud of you." And I remember Mom humming in the kitchen, a song I never knew the name of, but still hear sometimes when the wind comes through a screen door just right. No one warned us that those days would go, that the world would speed up, that silence would become rare, that we'd trade fireflies for fluorescent light, that radios would shrink and voices would multiply. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the windows open just enough, I swear I can smell that grass again, and hear the screen door close behind me. And just for a second, I'm 8 years old, and summer hasn't ended yet. I never hated school, not because I was particularly smart or eager, but because school, in those days, was something you belonged to. Our elementary school was a 2-story brick building with windows so tall the sun felt like a student. The desks creaked, the blackboards were never quite black, and the smell of chalk dust clung to our sweaters like it paid rent. Miss Caldwell was my third-grade teacher. She wore her hair in a tight bun and always smelled like lemon polish and peppermints. She had a sharp voice, but a kind heart. She once told me, "You have a mind like dry sponge, ready for water, not afraid of the mess." I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I never forgot it. There was something special about the way fall crept in. One morning, it would be summer. The next, you'd need a sweater, and your breath would show when you waited for the bus. The bus ride was loud and dusty, full of elbows and jokes and the occasional slap fight that ended with someone's hair being pulled. And yet, there was a quiet magic in it. We learned things before we ever walked into the building. How to share space, how to trade lunches, how to tell the truth in front of your friends, or learn to lie with a smirk. In the classroom, we pledged allegiance with hands over our hearts and eyes on the flag. We learned cursive and multiplication and how to draw a tree that actually looked like a tree. But what I really learned was how big the world could be inside a book. I remember the day Miss Caldwell handed me Charlotte's Web. I read it in 2 days, cried quietly, and didn't know how to explain the feeling that something imaginary could feel more real than anything on the playground. That was when I realized words could move you, even if you didn't know where they were taking you. Lunchtime was noisy and fast. Paper bags with squished sandwiches, milk in little glass bottles. A boy named Larry once ate 3 whole apples just to impress a girl. He threw up during recess, and we all treated him like a hero for a week. We had rules, but most of them were unspoken. Don't talk when the teacher does. Don't laugh during prayer. Don't bring your problems from home. But if you do, keep them folded small in your back pocket. There was one day that stayed with me. It was during a spelling test. The word was embarrassed. I froze, 2 R's or 1. I looked around, caught sight of Lila, the same Lila from 2 summers ago, now sitting 3 rows ahead, older, quieter. She must have felt my eyes. She turned, didn't smile, just blinked, slow and sure. Somehow, I remembered. 2 R's. I got the word right, and told no one it wasn't mine to earn. That's the first time I learned about grace. After school, we'd gather by the swings or walk home in groups of 2 or 3. The sun always felt lower by then. The air smelled of pencil shavings and old paper. And if you were lucky, your mom had baked something, or at least turned the oven on, which was almost the same thing. Evenings were slower. We'd do homework at the kitchen table. Dad would read the paper. Mom would listen to the news while folding towels. And the world outside the windows would fade from orange to purple like the sky was exhaling. One Friday, Dad came home early. He brought a box, long, with wires and tubes. A new radio. "It's got shortwave," he said, smiling. "Might even pick up Cuba." That night, we sat around the table, heads leaned close, listening to voices from far away. A British station. A song in a language I didn't know. A crackly baseball game from the coast. I remember looking up at Dad, seeing his smile soften, like a boy who still believed in distant places. I think that's when I knew. The world was bigger than Iowa. And someday, I wanted to find out how big. They say you never know the last time something will be just the way it was. But I think I do. It was the fall of 1957, and something had changed. Not outside. The maples still burned red in October. The same kids still played kickball on the pavement. But inside me, something had shifted. The world wasn't just big anymore. It was calling. That was the year we got our first television. A big box with knobs you weren't supposed to touch too fast. Black and white images that flickered like ghost stories. 3 channels, if the weather was right. I remember watching the launch of Sputnik. A tiny satellite, just a beep in the sky. And yet, suddenly, the world didn't feel so far away anymore. Dad muttered something about Russians and rockets. But I was too mesmerized by the idea that something man-made was up there, circling above us. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to imagine how far I could go. In school, they started talking more about the future. Science fairs, career day, posters of astronauts, engineers, scientists, all clean-cut men in ties, shaking hands with possibility. I still brought home B's and the occasional C in math, but I started reading popular mechanics at the barber shop. I wanted to build something. I didn't know what yet, just that my hands had to make something. Lila came back that spring. She had moved away 2 years earlier, but now her family was back, something about her dad's job falling through. She looked older, straighter hair, a notebook full of song lyrics in blue ink. I asked her what kind of music she liked now. She said, the kind my parents can't understand. That was new. We didn't ride bikes anymore. We walked, talked. She told me she wanted to move to California one day. Said she read in a magazine that everything was happening there. Surf, movies, radios that fit in your palm. I said, I thought you liked it here. She said, I like you here, but that's not the same. That line followed me home and sat with me during dinner. Mom passed the green beans. Dad asked how school was. And all I could think was, maybe Lila was right. Maybe this town wasn't built to hold the people we were becoming. One night, I tried to build a radio in the garage. It didn't work. I crossed wires, melted a fuse, nearly burned a hole in the bench. But I remember the feeling of it, the buzz in my chest, the thrill of possibility. I wanted that feeling to last forever. That spring, I rode my bike to the edge of town and just kept going. Past the last grain silo, past the old mill, down a road I hadn't taken before. Fields on both sides, a hawk circling above. The road eventually turned to gravel. I stopped when I saw a billboard, half faded. You are now leaving Easton County. Come back soon. I stared at it for a long time. It was the first time I understood that I could leave. That someday I would. When I came back, Mom was on the porch, arms crossed, worried but not angry. You get lost? She asked. I shook my head. She didn't push, just said, well, wash up. Supper's getting cold. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling again, but it looked different now. Not a place to escape through, but a place to aim for. I left home in the summer of 1960. 2 suitcases, one half empty. One goodbye hug from my mother, and a firm handshake from my father, the kind that said, don't forget who you are. I was headed to a college 2 states away, not a big name, not expensive, but far enough that when I told people where I was from, they had to ask, where's that? That's when I realized, leaving isn't the hard part. It's learning how to answer when someone asks where you're from, and feeling the ache behind your smile. The town didn't throw me a farewell party. It wasn't that kind of place. But the morning I left, Mrs. Dawson from the corner gave me a tin of cookies for the road. Coach Miller waved from his porch like I was shipping off to war. And the librarian, the one with the thick glasses and soft voice, handed me a copy of Mice and Men and said, bring it back someday. Or don't. Just promise me you'll read it twice. I still have it. Never returned it. Read it more than twice. The drive out was quiet. The roads were familiar, but I was already looking at them like a stranger. That's the thing about growing up. The moment you know you're leaving, everything starts to feel like a memory. Even the gas stations. Even the gravel. College was noisy. Louder than home in every way. Dorms with too many voices. Professors who spoke like the clock was chasing them. People who dressed like their clothes were opinions. I didn't know where to fit in, so I sat in the library. A lot. One night, I started writing down stories. Not for anyone, just for me. The bike rides. The porch light. Lila. The spelling bee. The smell of chalk dust and Dad's aftershave. Little things. I didn't know why I was writing. Only that when I did, I felt closer to something I didn't want to lose. That winter, I got a letter. Handwritten. Slanted. No return address, but I knew the writing. Lila. She said she'd moved again. California, this time. Said the ocean made everything feel temporary, even pain. There was no "I miss you." No "come find me." Just, some places stay with us because we gave them too much of ourselves to ever take it back. I folded the letter and kept it in my wallet until the ink faded. Sometimes, I think that was our goodbye. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quiet. Like most goodbyes. Years passed. I moved to the city, got a job, an apartment, fell in and out of love with people who didn't know about lightning bugs or triangle dinner bells. And every now and then, I'd smell fresh-cut grass in the middle of a busy street or hear a radio static between stations, and I'd stop. Not long, just enough to remember. I went back once. Not for long, just to drive through the old streets. The school was still there, but smaller. The diner was boarded up. The maple trees thinner than I remembered, but the sidewalk still cracked in the same places. The mailbox still leaned left. And the house I grew up in had new curtains, but the porch still creaked when I stepped on it. I didn't knock. I just stood there for a minute. Long enough. Then I left. They say you can't go home again. Maybe they're right. But what they don't say is, sometimes you don't need to. Because the home you left, the one with grass stains, chalk dust, and voices on the radio, it's already packed, folded into you. And wherever you go next, you carry it with you. Some stories never really end. They live in the quiet spaces between memories, in the smell of fresh-cut grass, in the crackle of a dusty radio, in the creak of a porch step, and in the silence after a screen door clicks shut. If you're here, still listening, then maybe something in this story reminded you of something in your own. Maybe it was a name, a street, a pair of old shoes by the door. Maybe it was someone you loved and never quite let go. That's the magic of these kinds of stories. They're not just fiction. They're echoes of your grandpa's voice at dusk, of the kitchen where your mom hummed old songs, of a town that may not exist on the map anymore, but lives somewhere behind your ribs. And now, I want to ask you something. If there's a memory still tucked away in your heart, if there's a story your family never finished telling, if there's something you wish the world hadn't forgotten, tell me. Drop it in the comments. It doesn't have to be long. Just a thread, a moment, a name. Because sometimes, what seems small to you could be the seed of a story someone else has waited their whole life to hear. You don't need to be a writer. You just need to remember. And if that memory is still with you after all these years, then maybe, just maybe, it's time someone gave it a voice. We'll be reading. And maybe, one day soon, we'll be telling your story. Until then, thank you for spending your time with us. And if it stirred something in you, subscribe, stay with us, and share the stories that still live in you. Because some stories are too true to forget.